Hi, everybody. It's August 2nd. It's Sunday. Bob and Doug have just dropped down into the ocean.
Yeah, they did.
With our private SpaceX flight combo with NASA. It's Kevin Smith's birthday.
Yeah.
And
Big 5-0.
Yeah. And now it's that means it's Sunday, which means we're talking about Saturday. Last week.
Last Saturday.
Last Saturday. I'm Bryce Rankins, and that's Brian Romero.
Hey.
And play the theme music.
Speaking gay.
Day theme music. Okay.
All right. That was good. Solid.
Okay.
Great.
So, if you haven't listened to the last two episodes, you missed out on two fantastic episodes about Comic-Con at home.
Yes.
And Comic-Con at home, if you decided you still want to skip those.
And you're starting it on day 3, but
you're starting it on day 3. Hey, some people just show up for Saturday at Comic-Con, right?
Right, yeah.
You know, maybe they're just showing up for Saturday for us.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate you at least being here for this, I guess. But if you haven't been listening to the other two, Comic-Con was at home this year because of some crazy COVID-19 nonsense.
Yeah, you may or may not have heard about it.
So you might not have heard about it. It's on the news. But Comic-Con streamed all of its panels. Most of them were just Zoom meetings that were recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were Zoom meetings that were recorded and then kind of beefed up a little bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything, they spliced in some trailers or they'd play the trailers so that we could still get our Comic-Con news, end of July announcement times without missing out on everything that Comic-Con had to offer. And we'll probably talk about the rest of the things that were missing from Comic-Con later.
Mm-hmm.
But Saturday had a whole slew of panels.
Yeah.
Brian, list off the panels we watched.
Yeah, so we had the official Dune publishing panel. We had Magic the Gathering panel. We had Bill and Ted Face the Music, which was freaking great. We'll get into that. We had Lovecraft Country. And then we also had an evening with Kevin Smith, speaking of birthdays.
We had a bunch of other panels, too. What other panels were there that we decided to skip?
So, and that's the beauty about Comic-Con at home, is you can just watch them later or whenever. So I ended up watching half of these panels on the day, and then the other few I watched like a couple days later.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going through the days. But the two that we missed, at least on my list here, we had the Fleet Science Center Celebrate Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the stories and science of android space travel and aliens.
Cool.
Yeah, so they had some of the cast, the writers, and they had a few scientists on. So I'll definitely watch that a little bit later because that's all my shtick. And then the last one that we missed that I'm definitely going to watch later is the What We Do in the Shadows panel.
Oh, yeah. I had it all prompted and ready to go, and then I realized that I haven't even actually technically finished season 1.
Yeah, second season's great, by the way. But
yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I'm sure they're going to talk spoilers because the whole thing's out by now.
Right, yeah, no, I should have watched it by now. But
yeah.
I have, I have other things to do, like stream all of Gundam.
Yeah. Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z, and, stream the shows that have been out for 30 plus years.
Yeah. We also, in the meantime, set up a nice projector in the backyard, and we were watching Dragon Ball Z on a projector.
Yes, we were. That was on our Instagram story, actually. Yeah. That was how I announced that we were recording new episodes.
Oh, nice.
I was like, we have new episodes recorded. But editing's going to have
We're going to do this first.
Because I need to know what's going to happen on Namek.
Yeah. It's
no
intense.
Spoilers, people at home.
Yeah, Bryce hasn't seen a lot of it, so we're going through it.
I jumped into Dragon Ball Z, right as the Android saga was going. I'd seen little bits and pieces there, and I was like, Dragon Ball Z's dumb. It's just a bunch of muscly guys yelling.
It is, but wait, there's more.
And then Charles, my BFF from elementary school, was like, no, dude, you don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand. You have to just come by and watch. And
that's kind of how it was with me and Tate and Keith and his brother got me into it. And so that, yeah.
I was reluctant, but that opened up a whole wide world.
Same.
Because shortly after that, I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. I'm also enjoying this show and this show. Mm-hmm. And then you start going on through the Toonami thing, and next thing you know, the anime snob in your forensics class who draws pretty Angel Sanctuary drawings is like, oh, no, here, let me bring you some DVDs. And next thing you know, you're watching bootleg DVDs of Trigun and a whole bunch of other things, and Now you got a whole shelf in your house dedicated to it, and 7 wall scrolls that you don't dare hang up because you wanted to, maintain the fact that you're not a virgin anymore. I'm pretty sure with every one of those wall scrolls, if I put it up, I would slowly regrow my V card or something. I would develop a hymen. Anyway,
that's how that works.
That's science right there.
But that's also another podcast right there.
That's not just another podcast episode. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
And not one I want to be a part of.
No, hard no. But we do plan on an anime podcast and a DBZ podcast. We got some things in the works, but we'll get to those eventually.
Let's just rebrand the whole podcast. Yeah. Regrowing your virginity. No more sneaky geek. It's not about gatekeeping. It's about finding the geekiest, nerdy shit you can find. And just wait. That's exactly what a podcast is about.
Yeah. Oh well.
We watching Dragon Ball Z tonight?
We are now.
Yeah, at least a little bit.
Yeah, but we'll get a couple.
We'll finish the disc. We'll finish this too.
That's what we'll do. Anyways, so
important planning is happening. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
As we do, feel free to check in on us and ask us how the DBZ watch is going.
Definitely,
we'll appreciate it.
Brian,
so
you watched most of the panels on Saturday.
Yeah.
Of these panels, I think I watched
a few,
2 or 2.5.
Yeah.
So let's start with Dune because that was the one you're all about. I don't know jack shit about Dune.
So
I know that Kyle MacLachlan was in Dune. And maybe
that sci-fi movie. Yeah.
William Hurt. Maybe.
I think he was. Yeah.
Maybe. I know he was in 1984.
There's a few.
And I know there's a thick ass book.
Yeah.
And I know that they're planning on making a trilogy.
Yeah. So here we go. So Dune was originally published in. I probably should look this up. Probably the 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know.
Dune was actually originally published in 65.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I was okay. So 65, from a guy named, Frank Herbert. Wow.
As a matter of fact, it was originally published on August 1st, 1965, which was yesterday.
Hey, happy birthday, Dune!
Happy birthday, Dune!
Nice. Okay, now that we got our shit together. So, it was out in the 60s from Frank Herbert. I actually read the first book in high school, and I loved it. I had a few friends that were reading it. And at the time, I was mainly into Star Wars, so I had the sci-fi kick going on, and Sci-Fi just announced they were putting out this movie, so I was like, cool.
Sci-Fi Channel?
Yeah, Sci-Fi Channel, the OG Sci-Fi Channel. So I read this book, and I loved it.
Oh, that was when it still spelled SCI-FI.
Yeah, like
Sightings was still on Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So Frank passed away in the 80s, I believe.
Frank Herbert?
Yeah. And his son took over, Brian Herbert, putting some of his books out because... so there's 3 books in the original trilogy, and now there's something like... there's a lot. And I think... Okay. So, when the original author, Frank Herbert, passed away, his son took over because Frank had all sorts of notes and stuff on how to finish all of his books and the story. And then along the way, Brian, his son, just kind of kept going with the notes and the story. And he actually teamed up with Kevin J. Anderson, who actually wrote quite a few Star Wars novels, like some of my favorites from the old canon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So he did a couple, quite a few books and quite a few comic books as well. And they were great. So, they team up. They just continue on. There's 14 total books. A couple of trilogies in there. There's a couple of just one-off books. And so I wasn't sure what this panel would tell us. They had both authors on, which was great. And I don't know if they were
both of the current authors, right?
Current authors, yeah.
Not the
not the guy that died.
Guy.
Yeah. No zombies. Yeah, that might be next year's. We'll see. Yeah, zombies. Yeah. Oh man.
God.
So and I didn't know if they were going to bring on or if they were going to talk about the movie or the books or the video game that was also announced. Turns out this was only the books and comic books, which was great. But they're putting out a prequel series for the main original Dune books. So they're just kind of like with the movie and the video game coming out, which they announced that they're both involved in, which is a good sign.
Video game?
Yeah.
Okay.
That they wanted to kind of bring new readers into it and kind of give a nice little backstory of stuff that leads right into it. Mm-hmm. So the first one comes out in October. which is great.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
My mom always talked about how much she loved Dune, and I don't know that she read it. I think she just really liked Kyle MacLachlan, to be honest. But I mean, my mom loves Dune, and if my mom gets into a sci-fi show, we're in it. That's how I've seen every episode of Star Trek 4 times.
Yeah.
I know that my mom loved Dune in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I assume that she's probably super excited about this. I did not know it was coming out as soon as October. That's really, really
the books are
nice. Oh, the new books are.
The new books are, yeah.
Okay, what's coming out? When's the show? When's the
movie? Sometime next year.
Okay.
Apparently, I don't think they have a set date, especially now quarantine's happening and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But no, they're deep into the movie, and I could have they've been filming the movie for a while, and I didn't know if we were going to get a trailer or something. We didn't, unfortunately, but.
Lame.
Yeah, so, all right, so we have a few comic book options coming out with this whole Dune series, which is cool. So they're both prequel series, one's a prequel series set 20, 30 years before the main Dune series, and this is just kind of a one-off thing with Boom Studios. They finally got the rights to, or the comic book and graphic novel rights for the Dune series, so they're going to see how this first run goes, and then continue on if it kind of blows up, which I hope it does, because I'm excited for these.
That'd be nice to have. I mean, because Boom is relatively. Boom usually does comics for existing cartoons.
Yeah,
that's one of their biggest sellers. You know, if you want comics about Steven Universe, Adventure Time, any of those guys, they're usually through Boom Studios. So to hear that they're taking on something that's a little more serious, like Dune, as like something that's kind of a big thing for them. I mean, again, this is an already existing IP that they're doing a comic for, so you know that's kind of goes with their normal shtick. But it's a departure in a way that I think could be really, really good or could not be. Honestly, it's anybody's game, because some of those comics for Steven Universe are great, but others, I'm like, you guys are taking some severe liberties with your story right here.
Right.
So I mean, but if they're being at least somewhat monitored by the original authors.
Oh, the original authors are writing it.
Oh yeah,
so which is good. So they're kind of a adaptation of some books.
Cool.
And then there's also another comic book company which I think had the publishing rights beforehand. They started working on another one before this, and turns out they're basically collaborating between the different character designs and and just the overall look of the characters and the building. So there's going to be a nice streamlined look to everything, which is pretty unheard of. Usually when a company gets rights, they completely do up their own thing. So this is kind of a nice partnership that they have going. I can't think of the name, and I'm not seeing it anywhere. But anyways, they announced a few more books that are coming out. Like I said, the comic books were kind of the big point that they were just focusing on for this little panel. And they talked about how they've known each other for 30 years, and they've written something like 2 billion words together, something like that. But they're they basically became BFFs through all this, which is really cool. And so they kind of and because this is Frank Herbert's son, and he has all of his original notes, everything's very, very spot on in universe with everything going. So I don't know if anybody's read it before. It's good stuff. I just picked up the last 2 books in the original series, or at least the original trilogy, because he did write 6 books.
Right.
So I'll probably flip through those and see, or I might just pick these comics up and see how it goes. I don't know. Either way, I'm excited for this stuff because I haven't really dug into it since high school. But I remember really liking it. And the movie came out and it was okay. So it's currently scheduled to be released December 18th of this year. Yeah. But again, we'll see how that goes.
That's cool. Do we know anybody who's in that?
We do. We got a lot of people in here. We have Timothy Chalamet, I don't know who that is, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Zendaya, and a few other names that I don't really recognize. Oh, Jason Momoa and Javier Bardem. Yeah, so it's a solid cast.
I love almost every one of those guys.
Yeah, and like I said, Brian Herbert and I think Kevin J. Anderson were involved with the writing, or at least greenlighting some of the stuff. So so I'm excited.
That's a great cast. Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Oscar Isaac's don't get me wrong, I hated him as Apocalypse, but if you've never seen Ex Machina, dude's amazing. the guy really knows what he's doing, and he's only going to improve.
Yeah. Hans Zimmer's doing the soundtrack.
Okay.
Which is pretty rad. But yeah, who's yeah, we're gonna get a lot of that. Get ready.
Sandworm comes out.
Yes. So that's kind of it for the Dune panel.
Well, and for those of you who don't know the rest of like Dune's influence, this is something that predates Star Wars.
This was one of the biggest sci-fi books
of all time,
and properties to come out.
Yeah, it's
and mid-60s
credited
too.
with influencing Star Wars.
Oh, big time.
It's considered to be one of the most influential sci-fi works of all time.
Yeah, but it's great. It's obviously set sci-fi. There's space travel planets, but there's like a spice trade and like political intrigue.
Well, and you're gonna find
good writing.
You're gonna find too that a lot of things reference Dune.
Yeah.
I mean, sandworms. Just to start, you get Beetlejuice and things like that, and Tatooine, right?
Yeah.
It's heavily influential on Star Trek, on
Game
Star Wars, on Nazca and the Valley of the Wind. If you're a big Miyazaki fan, it's referenced in pop culture constantly. I know that it's apparently an influence for 30 Seconds to Mars debut album.
Interesting.
And the line in Fatboy Slim's song "Weapon of Choice," "If you walk without rhythm, then you won't attract the worm," is also actually an almost near. It's like a near quotation of a section of the book, specifically about when he's like trying to teach him how to ride sandworms and stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But yeah, there's music, there's games, there's other forms of media. This is a huge influence, and it actually there are locations on Saturn's moon Titan that are named after locations in Doom.
That's cool.
Or in Dune. And like there's a crater named Dune that was named by the Apollo 15 people. Like
sweet, yeah.
So
it's
a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal, and it also all happens like pre-landing on the moon. Like it was written and published pre-landing on the moon. So that's pretty cool. And apparently it's the guy who wrote it is kind of like an ecologist and was kind of trying to be there's like good messages and stuff like that too. So
he's trying to be accurate with everything going on, but also very forward with writing and thinking. Yeah. So next on the list we have the Magic the Gathering panel. And what I mean,
I also didn't watch the Magic the Gathering panel.
I'll be honest, I watched half of it because I could not stand the guy doing it.
Oh, what a bummer.
If you watch it, he'll give good info, and the guy's name is Mark Rosewater. He's been working on Magic for 15, 20
Is he the moderator?
years now. It was only him in his living room.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was just talking about stuff. So it was a little interesting. He gave some cool info on the new expansion coming out, Zendikar Rising. It's coming out in September. They just released the main expansion for 2020.
For the
2021.
Core set?
Yeah. Core set 2021, I think it is.
Okay.
But it just kind of it expands on the storyline from last year's expansions or earlier this year's. Okay. I can't keep track of time these days. Again, time doesn't exist,
Yeah, no, time doesn't
so it looked interesting. He said he went back and redid a lot of some of the mana cards, so just the different locations and how pretty those cards look, and
is he an artist?
Awesome. I think he was.
Okay.
He heads like teams of these artists and stuff. So, so it was, like I said, it was interesting for what he was saying, but I just could not stand him, and I had to be like, all right, I'll move on.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just you're not, engaging enough. Sometimes you're relying just too much on the information. You got too much information to go, and sometimes you get moderators where you're like, why stop it? You're taking away from like everyone who's doing something. But if you're the only guy there, then And part of the reason panels are fun is because it's a lot of engagement back and forth.
Right.
Like I wasn't like 100% in love with the Dragon Prince panel,
right?
Because it's a little rough watching people playing their characters. I don't know. There was just something about it. It was like, wow, why does Callum have a mustache now? But like at the same time, the engagement and the back and forth between them all is really why I enjoyed it. But then on the flip side, Kevin Smith panel, which we'll talk about in a bit, that's just Kevin Smith just hanging out and talking. But
Yeah.
Kevin Smith also can just rock an entire, panel by himself.
Oh yeah, and he does it all the time because he's a podcaster, so he's used to being either by himself or with one other person, and that's it. And we'll get to him later because he had a whole thing. But
yeah. But if you don't have that sort of thing, and if you're not used to that sort of thing, that
right?
can be
And
really...
so I didn't fault him at all, mostly. So, anyways, moving on, we do have Bill and Ted Face the Music panel.
Well, before we go into Bill and Ted,
yes.
Did anything come out of the Magic panel that was like particularly newsworthy or exciting for what's coming up in Magic the Gathering?
I don't think so. It's just another expansion. They added in some new mana pools and that kind of thing, and we get those every once in a while. And
yeah,
and paying attention to all these geek sites and news and stuff, like I didn't see anything big coming out of it.
No, and
sometimes it's okay.
I don't know.
Sometimes
for me, Magic the Gathering, like sometimes they'll pull something out and you're like, oh, cool. They've
awesome.
Set it up
like
so you
with
can
the monsters, like Ikoria last set.
Ikoria or the Battle Bond, where now you can play with 4 people. And instead of just doing like 4 people and you're on a team, which was always something you could do.
Yeah, this was
it
focused
really
on it.
Makes it so that there's a lot of that synergy and building each other's decks instead of,
which was
that's designed for that. And things like that, I'm really into that kind of news. But when it's just like, I don't know, like legacy cards, I'm not that into.
Yeah, just reprints and
I mean like the cards where like you get like the storyline, like
on
those
turn
legacy
1 it
cards.
does this,
on turn 2 it does this,
and
those are cool. But for me, like I'm not engaged in the Magic the Gathering storyline.
Yeah, not really.
I don't know jack about any of the Planeswalkers really. I just enjoy the game.
Yeah, it's a good thing to play with friends and
it's fun.
And
to play.
we'll go like with everybody else, we go through phases where we're like super into it, and they're like, we're okay, we find something else, or we're just out of it. And then again, we're like, oh, this set looks really cool. Like I got really into the Ikoria monster set because Godzilla and all the Godzilla monsters were featured in there. And it was a really cool like partnership they did with the movie studio. But then after that, it's like, okay, I have some cards. We played a little bit, and then we kind of fell out. And then again, that's when we started our huge DBZ phase.
Sure.
And as we do, we'll go in and out of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's hard to keep up with Magic 2 because they keep releasing.
They just release so much so fast.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm not really into it, is because I can't afford to. And B, like I don't play enough to merit buying an entire new set of cards
every 3 months.
Yeah. Like no,
or 6 months or 9 months, whatever the rotations are.
Whatever the rotations are, and
not that we play with the rules of the rotations. And for those of you who don't know, they'll put cards that you can use in a certain set for it's usually 9 months to about a year and a half, and then as they keep releasing more sets, they kind of move on from those older cards and. You can still use older cards in tournaments and stuff, but a lot of times, like I've played in one tournament at WonderCon and a couple times at Comic Book Hideout just for fun, and they're usually pretty relaxed on the rules, depending on what kind of game we're playing. But it's hard to keep up. And
I mean, I have a German card in my deck, like in one of my decks right now, like, nice. And I have cards that are like at least 15 years old, and I'll take them out if somebody says like, hey, I'd like to play with just all modern cards for right now, But at the same time,
what's the difference? What's the big deal?
Is it that big of a difference? And I'm not the type who's competing, so I'm not
and that's kind of
gonna do that. Like I'd rather just play with like, hey, I got this really cool card.
Yeah.
And I also really like the dinosaur deck, and I don't like the idea of my dinosaur deck being invalid.
Right. Oh yeah, I have a solid dragon deck that I love.
Yeah. And like my goblin deck is full of old cards.
Yeah,
my vampire deck
and a lot of it too
at least 5 years old.
Because we're kind of also on the collector side of things. Like I like getting those older cards because they're just cool stuff and the artwork's great.
And when I go to a con, I'm not buying up booster packs unless I'm in a tournament.
No, yeah,
I'm buying up the free card or the cheap cards, or I'm buying out of the binder where it's like, hey, here's a card that's not even in tournaments anymore, but it's cool looking and it's got a neat thing it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've played more tournaments than I have. You've definitely competed more than I have with it, but
but
it just seems like it seems like while it's if you're into that, like this could be really really cool, but with everything that's going on, where are you going that you can play Magic frequently enough to merit going and buying a new set?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It's
the same thing.
tough.
It's the same principle as the 60 tie-in issues that Marvel's throwing out there.
Yep.
In order for this to work, you have to have people staying in a public location, either playing Magic together frequently every week, you know, coming in Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, or going and perusing the comic shop, and then, you know, and having enough people in there to merit buying extras.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's got like these cards are going to get lost.
Yeah.
They're going to get lost by the wayside, because by the time we're all out of this, there's going to be like, you know, 3 new decks that we've already.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they're still planning on. I know they pushed back a few of the releases because at this point in the year, how many months we've been on lockdown? Like they've had like 2 releases so far, and you know, I'd been not in the need or want to go grab more cards.
Yeah.
But anyways.
But sometimes you're leaving Target and you're like, oh, there's a Magic deck for like $3. I guess I'll buy that.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. Like, it's not like I won't buy them if I have the chance, but it's like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
Whatevs. Because again, we're just playing for fun, and that's
that's totally our prerogative. And if you would play like competitively and you're like, no, I want all the new cards, like don't slow down, and I'm into this. If that's you,
I get you, because that's me with the comic books.
That's totally me with comic books, and it's not quite me with video games. But I have a watch list. On an app that lets me know when my price drops so that I can snag that crap.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. But like those sorts of things are, that's my shtick for sure. But when it comes to like some people play video games super casually and they'll be like, yeah, I saw it for, like I have a friend who collects exclusively PS2 games.
Oh, wow.
And if he sees a cheap PS2 game, he grabs it and he'll play it. And he'll be like, yeah, right now I'm working through, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I haven't heard that title in like a decade and a half. But that's where he's at right now. He's collecting. Yeah. And for him, that's what it is. It's collecting. Yeah, he gets to play with it, but, it's a collecting
thing. It's his thing, yeah.
And so, but at the same time, like he's absolutely the guy who's watched, every new episode of the show he wants to watch, or he goes to the movies to go see, the next iteration of whatever, franchise he's watching. So,
yeah, that's just his niche.
Yeah. So, it is what it is. So let's move on to Bill and Ted.
Yeah. So Bill and Ted is probably by far my favorite panel of this entire Comic-Con at Home.
I think that I'm with you on that too.
Yeah. No, it was great, and it was moderated by Kevin Smith himself, who's a huge fan of the series. If you haven't seen any of the Kevin Smith's movies, then that he loosely based his characters on kind of how Bill and Ted interact and how they are.
Toward the end of the panel, he actually said, Jay and Silent Bob are part of, and he's been saying this since the movie came out.
I'm impressed for like my movies and stuff. When I would talk about Jay and Silent Bob, I was like, these characters are part of a proud cinematic tradition, which goes as far back as Cheech and Chong and Bill and Ted and stuff like that.
Goofy duo, or with a kind of screwball and a straight man.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, Bill and Ted are both kind of screwballs, but like that idea, he's been saying like these guys are inspired in part by characters like Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
So
he's been saying that since the beginning.
Yeah. Those characters are in Clerks, like the OG Kevin Smith, like breakout film.
Yeah. Back in '94. Yeah. So we had Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, Bill and Ted in there. We had Samara Weaving, Bridget Lundy Payne. They play the daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have William Sadler, who is Death.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had the director, Dean Parasot, and the writers, Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, who also wrote the first 2, which is great.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the panels that they recorded it, and then they went in and kind of edited some nice little visuals on top of everything.
Yeah, yeah. So each of their screens was surrounded by a phone booth.
Yeah,
which was
it was great,
just rad.
And then when they talked, it kind of like lit up, which was nice, so you can kind of tell because
you always knew
so many people on stage,
and the video qualities were actually really good too. Like they made sure not to have too much. Cut out and things like that. Whereas other ones, they straight up left the problems of Zoom, in there. Whereas in this one, they did kind of like what Reunited Apart does, in that sometimes some of the actors will have a second camera recording them. So if for some reason something cuts out or their feed isn't clean enough, there's at least a video they can splice in instead as a backup. Yeah.
Yeah, which is nice. And it kind of gives a nice little different perspective than just a regular Zoom meeting kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But no, it was great. They talked about just the legacy of the characters. They talked about how they created these characters, the process of writing them, 30 years later and having kids. And it was kind of cool the way they also premiered the trailer, but they split it up into sections.
Yeah.
So they played like 20, 30 seconds of the trailer, and then they talked and interviewed for 5-6 minutes, and they did it again, and then kind of broken up that way. And it kind of kept things moving at a good pace, but then also just kept the energy up.
It was so much fun. That's my favorite type of panel too. Like, you don't have to give me a lot, but if after some conversation, every 5 to 15 minutes, you show me something, and if that something is art on the screen, or we take a break and have two of the characters or two of the actors like perform something, or like that was one of my favorite parts about the Steven Universe panels is they talk and then they would show something, and then they would talk and then they'd show some art, and then they'd talk and they'd go, hey, we have Estelle and AJ Michalka, like, have them sing a song while Rebecca plays it, plays something. Cool. And if you don't have something to break that up, those conversations can get hard to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Especially for ADHD people like us. Yeah. But there's a certain, just after a certain point, doesn't matter how engaging or interesting the conversation is, things start to kind of stagnate. Yeah. And by putting in these little bits,
and I think
amp yourself right back up again.
Yeah, and to bring back a little bit, I think that was part of the problem with that Magic the Gathering panel. Because it was just that one guy just talking.
Yeah, no, if he'd had like art moving across the screen.
Yeah. Granted, again, I only watched half of it, but for the first half, it was just him talking at you, and it was like, all right, what else is new? Yeah. And that's why this panel is great, because there was, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 people up on the screen, which can be a lot, but the way that Kevin split up the questions and focused on certain people.
And again, this is a podcaster. He knows what he's doing when it comes to an interview and having these, conversations.
Plus, he's a fan, so he's asking...
Oh, he's such a geek.
Yeah, so he's asking, like, all the fun questions, getting all this behind-the-scenes stories. So it was great. I'm real excited for that movie.
My favorite part about the panel, for me, Keanu Reeves being there is obviously just cool. A joy. I love Keanu Reeves so damn much. Yeah. And the two actors who are playing their daughters were actually both really, really cool too, and they both seem like they're very talented.
Oh yeah.
They would talk about aspects of the creative process that you don't necessarily get a lot of unless you're in a group of people who also do that thing. And I think at panels, there's a certain, that you're talking to the audience and it's just a little less intimate.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Zoom thing, one of the things that kind of helps is you can start talking about process in a way that isn't as commonly just outspoken, especially by actors and by writers.
Yeah.
And when you do get those glimpses, I'm always like eating that shit up. Right, I want to know how many napkins Dave Filoni drew something on, and
we all want that. Yeah.
And I want to see here's some funny doodles I drew of Yaddle to screw with George Lucas, and Kevin Smith really brought that out by asking some really good, open questions that they could kind of expand on. It's not just, do you have a particular process? It's like, what about your process has changed?
Yeah.
Things like that really guide these conversations. Yeah. And the writers were like, here's how these characters were conceived, developed, grew, and then we left them and we've wanted to, but we thought about them forever.
Yeah.
And now we have them back, and it's like, now we have to find where would these characters actually wind up and go. And then on the actor side of things, they're talking about what it's like to watch Keanu Reeves, go back into this character. And Keanu Reeves is even like, as soon as we were here, and doing this, it was just fun.
Yeah.
But there's no other place that I can laugh like this, and to the craft, and then that doesn't exist anywhere else for me. And that kind of laughter and that kind of connection like that.
He said they came back naturally, like they never even left.
Alex Winter's dude, as soon as we were done with our first scene, it was like, Bill and Ted are back.
Yeah.
And it was like revisiting an old friend for them.
And it was fun watching them talk about that because they both lit up. And they're like, oh, no, it was great. And
yeah, because you kind of come back into this space that it's like when you meet, it's like when you show up to a group of friends that you don't hang out with often, but like you have like a little mini reunion, suddenly you're back to, like, you're just transported. You're back to where you were. Like, oh my God, I'm back working at the rec center again. Or, oh my God, I'm back at Camp Kern again. Or, oh my God, I'm a Boy Scout.
Hell, that happens whenever Tate comes back for Comic-Con now.
Dude,
every time. Like,
every time I turn into a freaking, I turn into a
Tate, we miss you.
Tate, we miss you.
Yeah.
Come back,
if
Tate.
you're listening.
You better be listening.
So pissed if you're not listening, dude.
Okay. But in the actor side of things, they talked about how, like, watching them work together is just an honor because you're watching two people bring back something that is obviously so, like, developed and ingrained in them.
Yeah.
It was also really fun to watch them talk about the fact that, like, for people like Kevin Smith and like us, Bill and Ted, Keanu Reeves went from Bill and Ted to Point Break to Neo to John Wick. I watched him turn into
a badass action. So after being a goofy ass dude in this movie. Yeah.
Whoa.
Meanwhile, the actresses who play the daughters were like, oh no, like it was weird watching him go from like badass John Wick to this goofy dude. And Kevin Smith's like, we had, that was what I'm feeling, but it's the opposite. And the way they were talking about that, it's like, holy crap.
The
something you don't even think about, but it's true.
They were talking, she was like, what's Weaving's first name?
Hugo. No. Well, okay, we'll get this. Sam.
Sam Weaving, who plays Bill's daughter, Bill S. Preston Esquire. Yeah. His daughter was the woman who plays his daughter was talking about, because she's Hugo Weaving's niece. She's like, I watched you kill my uncle when I was a child. Like this, she's coming from a an actor legacy family, but she knows Keanu Reeves as Neo.
Right.
Like her major introduction is like, you're the enemy of my, uncle who's playing the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it was really cool just seeing like this kind of opens up like a whole, and I've seen this happen. We've seen this happen multiple times. You bring back a franchise and suddenly everyone goes, well, wait, I want to see these originals.
Oh yeah.
And Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure holds up.
Oh, they hold up great.
I was never huge on Bogus Journey. We definitely rented it like 3 times.
Yeah.
So clearly somebody in my family liked it. But Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is, my whole family still quotes it.
Nice, yeah.
All the time. Like, we call Socrates Socrates when we talk about it in my house.
Yes.
In my many discussions with my family about Socrates and, Aristotelian arguments. No, but if Socrates comes up, we talk about Socrates.
Yeah.
And the Waterloo and all that. Like, this was something that defined so much for especially people just a little older than us, but given that
the
I
80s
was
kids,
the 80s kids, and given that we're like
some of the 90s kids,
almost 80s, almost 80s we're kids completely. I'm raised in a family with 2 very 80s kids,
right?
I watched Fraggles, and I have 2 older siblings who were born like almost a decade before me, and then half a decade before me. Like, I got there's a spread there.
Yeah,
but for me, that little conversation about process, about the fact that Bill and Ted were characters that these guys jokingly were.
Yeah.
The writers pretended to be these guys and like performed at one point as these guys. These were just these improv characters that they became. And
then just fleshed out.
Yeah, they fleshed it out and turned it into a movie. And then the hard question comes of, we've put together these characters that are kind of out of ourselves. Who do we put in these parts? And they
had a good story about that.
Yeah, their story about Keanu and Alex both being in front of them
at McDonald's. They didn't know. They got to, I think they were shooting in Arizona. Yeah, they got to wherever they were shooting. They decided to go to get lunch, and there's these 2 goofy dudes in front of them that were just joking, and they're like, "Oh man, I wish we can get these kids in front of these guys are perfect.
These guys are perfect, yeah."
And they show up a couple hours later on set, and sure enough, it's these 2 dudes. It's Keanu and Alex.
Yeah.
And then it just worked out. Yeah.
He loves San Dimas. Every time I drive by San Dimas, I think about Bill and Ted. And so all of that is great. But then at the end, and mind you, the whole time, Kevin Smith's just gushing about how much he loves this movie.
Oh, he's like, smiling and just having a hell of a good time.
He's thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, the man's living his dream, for sure. But Kevin Smith's remark early on was, this movie made me cry.
Yeah,
and
this new movie, yeah.
Bill and Ted Face the Music made him cry, and not because it was because he was over emotional or because it was this beautiful testament to cinema or anything like that, but because it just has so much heart and soul and love, and it's just such like a great way to move this franchise into this particular time period. And he said it's just a perfect movie.
Satisfying. Like you fucking stuck the landing. It was a tall order to head back in, but so worth the effort. Everybody across the board's made it a wonderful emotional experience, man. That's what fucking movie making should always be. Well done, kids.
He also last night in the special features on the Venom DVD said that he was super excited about that, but I mean, and at one point he said that Star Wars Revenge of the Sith was one of the greatest movies he's ever seen, which looking back, it has aged well. I mean,
it did.
Have you heard the tale of Darth Plagueis voice?
It's
not a story that Jedi would have told you.
Then I probably haven't.
Oh, okay. Time of Palpatine, 3:10.
All right.
Oh, it's not.
It's not
that's
too
pretty
bad.
good.
Okay. Yeah. So that was the Bill and Ted. was the Bill and Ted.
I love that panel. So obviously I gush a little bit.
Well. Like I said, that was by far my favorite panel of this whole Comic-Con at home.
And these panels have to live up to Reunited Apart for me. Reunited Apart is like the dream panel. You get everybody you possibly could hope for. Mm-hmm. You have really good questions. You get a guest moderator to join the actual moderator.
Yeah.
That's the standard I have for if you're going to be doing a Zoom meeting, do it right.
You better go all out.
Why not?
Yeah.
And
what else are you doing right now?
What else are you doing right now? I don't panicking about the government not recording your podcast. So next panel.
Yeah, so the next panel was we actually watched yesterday was the
Lovecraft Country.
Which is a new show.
So excited for Lovecraft.
Yeah, so it's a new show on HBO, based off of H.P. Lovecraft's just kind of overall universe vibe.
The mythos of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick little breakdown of what that all entails for?
So H.P. Lovecraft, I did a Halloween maze on H.P. Lovecraft, and we dove pretty far into it, and then lately we've also done an H.P. Lovecraft themed RPG game, tabletop RPG game. H.P. Lovecraft is one of the first major kind of sci-fi writers, as it were. The idea of cosmic horror, that the infinite emptiness and mystery of the cosmos is just unfathomable for most humans, and so there's a lot of themes of insanity, of occultism, and
monsters,
it's these monsters that are so grotesque and otherworldly that you will literally go insane by even being in their presence or learning about them, because they are just so unfathomably terrifying. The Fish People of Innsmouth is one of his big ones. The Call of Cthulhu is a big one. I wish Clay was here. Special guest Clay Davis has been AWOL for like 3 months. But he was really doing a huge deep dive into this Lovecraft stuff, and
he was our DM for the game, by the way. He was great.
And I dove in pretty hardcore for Lovecraft when I did my Halloween maze based around Lovecraft. I always do. I find, because I want to find things in it that scare me, which means I got to go pretty deep.
Yeah.
And in that, may she rest in peace. Our dear friend Shannon Borky was kind of my liaison for that. Her and Ian Bryant. And the two of them both were here's all the things you need to know. And lots of things have come out of this. The Necronomicon and ideas like that have all come out of this idea that these things, these elder gods, these things before time, existed and are worshipped by certain little sects that understood them, because worshiping them and loving them and diving in and holding on to that is probably the only way they could even maintain some degree of sanity.
Holds them back. And
it it is just so, like, it's so well done that it is borderline maddening to read it, because you're like, no, this is actually like, this does make me uncomfortable. These ideas that, like, there's something that's so big that I can't fathom it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that ant theory that, you know, the ant doesn't really know humans exist. It can't really fathom their existence. It just sort of exists, and then sometimes one of them just goes dead. Yeah. You know, and the idea that maybe there are things in the universe that are so big and so vast and so gigantic that we as humans can't understand them, you know, and can't even fathom their existence because they're just so crazy. And that's where, like, Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth or Yog-Sothoth or
Galactus,
you know, all this craziness comes from.
Yeah.
Cthulhu aside, Lovecraft Country is, from everything we've seen, the story of a family in the Jim Crow era, a black family in the Jim Crow era that has some sort of familial tie to a group or a history or a legacy of something Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
And they're trying to navigate Jim Crow era world while also taking care of figuring out where
what the hell's going on. Yeah.
And so you've got a very unique, not often dealt with
it's a very
story
interesting perspective
with
for
a very unique perspective that we don't see very often, especially in sci-fi. So that's everything you need to know before the panel.
Yeah.
And then the panel started.
And it was heavy. It was not what we were expecting.
Not at all.
It was all the
it was just the cast.
Just the cast, and then the moderator. No writers, none of the producers. Well, actually, let me just.
The panel.
Yeah.
The panel was rough.
It was.
It wasn't a bad panel by any means.
No, it was really good.
Yeah, and when it started, I was like, I'm not here for this. This is not what I came in here for. But then, like, you start watching, you're like, I may not be here for this, but I need to be here for this.
Yeah.
And
very important conversations happening about the current events in the world and Black Lives Matter and all that good stuff. And this show was created and shot before any of this happened.
Before any of what's currently
happening, right? Yeah,
you know,
with all the protests and everything.
But you've got a cast that is dealing with essentially, like, familial scars in their own lives.
Yeah. And I said, I live here, ma'am, quietly. I live here. Dun! She was shouting at the top of her lungs midnight in this quiet little white area.
They're all and every one of them had some sort of a story.
Yeah, they all talked about some sort of story.
Asleep. They're three. Okay. And finally, there was a sister, police officer. There was 7 of them out there. She said, oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Mr. Vance, I'm so sorry.
Pulled over and harassed. You know, harassed at a restaurant because somebody was afraid to just ask a question.
Yeah.
You know, these stories all came out, and they're all very, they're putting their hearts on their sleeves to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
But this is also a cast that has to have all of that in their life and then act. And this is back to that meta thing that I you know, this process thing that I love. And then act with this sort of shared trauma in mind in a film and in a show, in a story that is about some of the worst of those events.
Yeah.
And we did not get very much in regards to
the
show's, like, Cthulhu-esque mythos.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I was disappointed.
Right.
I wanted a little bit more about what kind of things are we expecting. We didn't get a whole lot about plot. We got a lot about the show's significance for being a show that is using this perspective.
Yeah.
And while I think that's important,
definitely,
and while I absolutely am here for it and I'm excited for the show, heavy as it might be, I would have appreciated that being its own panel so that we could talk about other things as well. But I also like that it's like, hey, if you want to know about Lovecraft Country, you're going to have to know about this stuff too.
This messed up stuff too.
And I get that. But at the same time,
Watchmen did something very similar.
The Watchmen panel?
No, or the Watchmen TV show. The TV show.
Yeah. You know, you're having tough conversations about something in a story that doesn't typically have those conversations. In a genre that doesn't typically have those conversations. Right. But Yeah, it's. I mean, I was definitely here for it when it was all said and done. I was like, I'm glad.
Yeah, I was very glad we watched it.
that.
Yeah,
but and I mean, it wasn't. Before it got to that point where they finally were like open it up and stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly.
It was a little dull.
It was dull, yeah. I mean,
because it's almost like they didn't know where they wanted to go with it, but they kind of figured they did.
Once they bought in and were like, "This is the conversation we're having. Let's have this conversation." Yeah. It was like, "Yeah, this is a conversation." It's not like I haven't had this conversation with people before, but leading up to it, this is I didn't come out of that show. I didn't come out of that panel hyped for the show. Until like they showed the final clip.
Yeah, they did show a clip from it at the end, and it didn't really give much away, but they were like in a library looking for something, and then there's a secret door, and there was like a monster.
Secret passages.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
So that was that panel, and again, like it wasn't what we expected, but I'm very glad we watched it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really important, and I mean, if you don't mind having this conversation right now in the middle of this, but I mean, let's have it. Yeah. I think it's important that these genres do talk about other experiences.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to do a piece that is the Wild West with aliens, cowboys and aliens or other supernatural stuff like Jonah Hex, if you're going to do that, you're going to see the perspective of the average, well-to-do, not currently prosecuted cowboy living in that world.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
And I like when that happens, and I like seeing it, but there are other stories that happen.
Yeah, like you're probably, like, I would love to see it, but, like, the Native American side of all that.
Dude, that's why I liked American Gods.
Yeah.
American Gods very heavily, especially towards the second third of the book, talks about what the perspective of the Native Americans were in this world where gods are coming to this country.
Yeah.
And, and including from gods that were, brought there. And and American Gods was really cool because some of the gods came with characters, with groups that intentionally came here. Others came with groups that were fleeing, came with slaves, came with came from the Native Americans. Like, some of these gods that came got stuck here got dragged here in part because of the transatlantic slave trade and things like that. And I like seeing that perspective, especially in something where I've seen the white guy deal with the aliens in the Wild West. Cool.
Yeah.
What
else do we got?
What about the Gauchos? What about the Californios? What about the people of the gold rush? What about the Chinese immigrants who were working on the railroads? I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Like, dealing with all the crap that you're dealing with while also trying to keep a low profile about, like, hey, we uncovered some crazy ancient alien stuff.
Yeah, right.
Writers, get on that shit.
Yeah.
I want transatlantic railroad, Chinese workers dealing with
aliens,
old aliens, possibly interdimensional beings, as point of fact.
We could do a sequel.
Skulls.
I don't know. Yeah.
No crystal skulls. No crystal skulls. Those skulls belong in a museum.
They do.
Anyway, I think it's important that we have these perspectives in these other things because, frankly, like, I can only see cowboys and other things or 1920s dealing with this other sci-fi thing so many times before I'm like, hit me with something else.
I'm going to go watch cartoons, I've seen this before. I'm going to...
Yeah. That's... And sometimes it's really nice to see that with, like, a metaphor, X-Men, Ninja Turtles, Gargoyles, these people who are like, I'm trying to do the right thing, but I'm doing the right thing for a country, city, town, neighborhood that hates me. And those sorts of conversations can be really, really cool. And that's something I'm really enjoying about Gargoyles right now, which I am watching a lot of.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Disney Plus. If you haven't watched Gargoyles since you were a kid, go back.
Yeah.
It's weird as shit.
Yeah.
But with that, as much as I want to have that difficult conversation, I also want to have the difficult conversation and keep in mind that you're having that conversation in this world. In this sci-fi world. And I don't know that this panel found that middle ground to do that. Again, I'm glad I listened to it. Really glad I watched it.
Yeah.
Especially hearing all of their individual stories of like, this is the time that here's when I dealt with racism and here's when it was at its worst. And those conversations were, I mean, they were hard for the cast to do. People were crying.
Oh yeah.
But this is one of those times where crying at a panel is something I was all okay with.
Yeah.
Like that was, I was like, go for it.
Yeah.
So that was the Lovecraft Country panel. It was rough, but it was important.
Good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I haven't even gotten to the real strange part.
Complete switch of
narrative
theme
themes.
topics. We have an evening with Kevin Smith.
An evening with Kevin Smith. I was cooking fish during most of this, so I only remember a few things. But
so Kevin Smith typically he's basically the king of Comic-Con. That was his thing for a little bit. And,
definitely.
Every Saturday Comic-Con, he has a closing panel that he does, and he'll bring on the cast of whoever or whatever movie he's been working on. So I went last year, and he did
something between Cup of Joe and Dave's birthday.
Yeah. So it was
Cup
like
of Joe being the Joe Quesada, like, you know, anybody can ask anything, and Dave's birthday being Dave Grohl's concert that he has on his birthday where he brings in a ton of extra guests. Just has a fun time with people he likes that are in or out of the industry.
Yeah.
So
it was basically like that. So last year I've seen it twice. Last year it was the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. So he showed a couple clips from there and talked about the process.
This was at that Comic-Con that you got to go to that I didn't get to go to.
Yeah, that one. That's the one.
Go in.
Yeah, it was great. So this year it was him talking to the camera, and he had like 10 or 12 plot or points that he wanted to speak on. So we went through, and it was he did it. And you can tell they edited some stuff later, which was great because it added some more just energy and broke things up a little bit. But he talked about putting his hands in concrete at the Chinese theater and how his parents took him there when he was a kid, and just how
TCL Chinese Theater. Shout out to Bob, a guy I worked for once who happens to be a part owner of the TCL Chinese Theater. But yeah, that's a huge thing.
It's a huge thing.
It's a huge thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, from experience, knowing how that process now works of getting to have your hands in that, like, it's a process.
Oh, I bet.
First of all, they're limited on space. Second,
there's only so much.
They have to think, you know, is there longevity to this person doing this, or is this sort of are they currently in their 15 minutes of fame? The people who get to do it, there's a certain degree of negotiation of like, can we put, you know, this actor's hands in the concrete here? Is that something that we can do? And then when they finally do it, it's a whole party.
Oh yeah.
You know, you bring in the press, you have a speech, you give them a podium and a microphone and let them talk. Like, it's a whole thing to do that, and to make that happen for Kevin Smith, frankly, is overdue. But that's so important.
Oh yeah,
and so
he was saying that he was surprised because he made 2 characters about that do dick and fart jokes and smoke weed and shit, and he's like, I didn't realize I was gonna do this, but because of his movies and how well written they are and how much love is in them, and you know, Jay and Silent Bob aside, in all the movies they appear in, like, it's great stuff. And then he also said that and I remember hearing about it earlier on. They put, or the U.S. Congress, whatever.
Oh, the Library of Congress. Library of Congress, which decides what stories and film and media are important parts of America.
Yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah, they decided to pick Clerks to be put into this
immortalized.
Library. Yeah, immortalized in the Library of Congress.
Honestly, Clerks is such a testament to like middle America, lower class America dealing with convenience store bullshit. You know, and I mean, it's very niche in that regard, but like, anybody who's ever had a service job that they didn't like,
where they had to deal with customers,
bosses they didn't like, you know, any of that, has had that experience.
Oh yeah.
And then you add to that the fact that like his buddy is there hanging out because no one's coming into this job on that day.
Or they are,
any of those days where like nothing's happening at work and you work in a retail or service job. Like, we've all had
and
that
your good
day.
friend coworker just comes over to who's also working, but just kind of leaves their post because they're like, who cares? Whatever. Like,
Yeah,
he's been there.
what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
What are they gonna do?
Oh, Randall. Yeah, so he was talking about that. He spoke a little bit on
Snowballing.
It's called snowballing.
You request this?
He gets off on it.
Snowballing is in the Library of Congress.
yes.
If you don't know what that is, please don't go look it up, especially you, Mom. Anyway,
Oh man.
I think my mom's seen Clerks. I'm pretty sure she owns the DVD, so if it's not her, it's Barrett. But either way,
Nice. Yeah.
we've watched it.
So he's also writing the new He-Man and
Masters of the Universe.
So he talked about that a little bit and how he's seen a lot of stuff and they don't have a trailer just yet. They're hoping by the end of the year. But he did reveal some key artwork that has never been seen before. He hyped it up.
Let's put that on our Instagram.
Yeah, we'll probably throw
That's
that
a
up.
great one to have on our Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find that.
Yeah, it's great, and I hope they use it in the show. I don't know if they will, but
Quality
one can
concept art.
Hope, yeah.
Quality concept art.
He talked about Twilight of the Mallrats, which is going to be the Mallrats sequel.
Dude, I'm so excited for this crazy amount of sequels he's doing. Like, I just want that Dogma sequel, but like, Mallrats is great.
Oh yeah,
I mean, Mallrats is super. I mean, shoot, they referenced it in Captain Marvel. Like, it's very important.
yeah. And he talked about at the time where it completely bombed and the studio hated it, and then 10 years later, during the 10-year anniversary re-release, somehow it just blew up.
Yeah,
And that's when I got the DVD for it. And
oh really?
yeah, it was during that little run there. And
Used to play on Comedy Central all the time.
yeah.
That and Saving Silverman.
Oh yeah. So he talked about that, and so originally Mallrats 2 was supposed to be like a Netflix series.
Oh really?
Like a 10 episodes like maxi series. That was it.
Huh.
And he actually did a thing on Instagram or Twitter where he went to every single one of the actors that was in that movie and asked them, "Will you be in this?" And every single one of them said yes.
Oh yeah.
It was such a huge thing, and they're like, "Cool, it's like I have a couple scripts, I got a big old plot, I just have to plot this out, but I can't do it unless I have everybody in because everybody has an important piece in this."
Yeah.
And then
And you're all a part of the story, and the
Yeah.
amount of appreciation that Kevin Smith has for the people he's worked with,
oh yeah,
is.
and the love they have for
I mean,
him.
the guy just gushes with love. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he is like a geek about everything.
Mm-hmm.
He like geeks out on people. He geeks out on his friends.
Yeah.
He geeks out on the work. He geeks out on just like if there's something. And for me, the idea of being a geek is going, I've thrown myself into this idea, whether I'm a geek about linguistics or if you're a geek about body physiology or if you're a geek about Star Wars or Kevin Smith movies or whatever, throwing yourself in and just giving all that love unabashedly, just no shame. This is what I am. And I feel like Kevin Smith, every time I hear this guy talk, I get two things. I get brutal honesty, like he will just lay it out how he feels about something. But at the same time, with that, because he's just such a good dude, that brutal honesty often comes out in the form of, this is how much I love and appreciate this thing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't
that's
think
why-
people understand that love until they've actually listened to him talk. Because I used to hear you talk with Kevin Smith all the time. I'm like, I also
he's been
like
one of my
Clerks
favorite
and Dogma.
dudes for forever.
But like you've gone and seen him.
Oh yeah, a couple
more
times.
than more than once. And every time I hear you talking about it, I'd be like, yeah, Kevin Smith's kind of a cool dude. And then I heard him talking about like making Red State.
Oh yeah.
Or making Cop Out. And how he's like, I'm not ashamed because I had to do that in order to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
I think it was he needed to do Cop Out in order for Red State to happen.
I think that's what it was.
The other way around.
Yeah, something like that.
And he'll no shame.
Yeah.
And I think he used to be a little bit more like willing to just, complain about certain people.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that kind of bit him in the ass. But I feel like now, and I don't know if it's just that he's gotten older and wiser, or if it had to do with the heart attack or whatever. But every time I hear him talk, I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, I love that too. And I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
I love that too. And I don't know. He's
definitely
a big influence for us too.
I was gonna say he's
why we were
like
so excited to meet Ming Chen.
Yeah, he was one of the biggest influences like out of high school, because that was kind of my his movies were kind of my sense of humor, but like it was all geek stuff, but there was some dick and fart jokes, but then he dropped the F-bomb all the time, but it wasn't gratuitous where he did it, but at the same time like sentence enhancers, that's what I always call him, but even just his unabashed geekness for everything, like I fucking love that. I ate that up, and it was really cool seeing that, because at the time like not a lot of people in high school did that.
Literally, the name of the show is Sneaky Geek, because loving something that hard seemed unnatural to most people.
Yeah.
And because we were living in kind of a pre-social media time, there really wasn't a lot of gushing about just about anything.
Yeah.
And this dude was fine with it, and that same idea is why I loved Mitch so much in high school. And I mean, and I still do. Mitch Thompson is one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
Mitch reminds me a lot of Kevin Smith.
And me and him used to talk about him all the time.
Kevin Smith, I learned about Kevin Smith through him and Tyler McGinty, who also was real close with Mitch, and in that same sort of, I love what I love, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, things like that led to me being fully open and saying, yeah, this is the thing I'm into, and I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm the freaking president of the anime club in high school.
Yeah.
And I still have a little bit of trouble saying that out loud to most people, but that is the sort of thing that the world needs more of.
Oh yeah.
Like, love what you love.
Hell yeah.
So
Definitely.
that's my favorite thing about Kevin Smith. Brian, what's your favorite Kevin Smith thing?
Yeah, all of it.
Great answer. Great answer. You're really he brought the big guns.
Yeah. So he's done a whole lot of different movies over the years, especially the last 7 or 8. He had a few on like Netflix with Tusk and Yoga Hosers, which I haven't seen either yet, and I really need to. But they're both different. They're not. Tusk was kind of a thriller, kind of actiony. Yoga Hosers was like a kid's movie for his daughter, to put her in Johnny Depp's daughter in, because they're friends in real life and stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but he was talking about his next movie. That's called Kilroy Was Here. And it's a horror movie. Here. It's a horror movie, and it's like, it looks great. I'm not super huge into horror, but it's also very Kevin Smith. So there's goofy humor in it, gallows humor, like dark humor. There's like blood, like a lot of blood. The trailer was great, just stupid jokes, but also like there's definite horror vibes, and so it looks good. He was talking about that a bit. Has
and
a whole bunch of his friends. Yeah, trailer was good. He talked about his new podcast that he created with his daughter Harley, and it's a vegan podcast. They don't preach about it, but they're like, hey, here's the common misconceptions. We're gonna bring in a someone who knows what they're talking about. Nutrition wise,
vegan details and living vegan from like a non-preachy.
Yeah.
Like, just here's the facts. Here's what with cool friggin' people.
Yeah. So I'll probably check that out eventually. And then he also talked about the movies pop up in Hollywood.
Oh yeah. Movies like moo bees.
Yeah.
Which
the cows
with anyway.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with any of the Kevin Smith movies, he features this made up fast food chain in like half of his movies. Well. Yeah.
It was really heavily pushed in Clerks 2.
Yeah, in fact, the entire movie takes place in a movies.
Yeah.
They visit in Dogma.
Bring it back.
Yeah, bring it back. I love that movie. They have one in Hollywood, and it's in the same location that they've done a few other themed restaurants in, like the Saved by the Bell one, and there's another one he talked about. I can't remember. Oh, the Good Burger.
Oh,
from
Good Burger.
From Good Burger. Yeah.
From Keenan and Kel.
Yeah.
Welcome to Good Burger. Home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order?
Classic. So same location, same concept artist that came up with it, but they started shipping out like the food. So if you're living across the country and can't make it, they'll send you a box like like Ugly Vegetables or The Blue Apron.
You mean Imperfect Produce?
Oh yeah.
We
Same
call
thing.
it Ugly Vegetables.
Yeah.
Blue Apron, Hello Fresh.
Yeah. So same kind of thing. Like they'll send you it. They'll tell you how to cook it. They'll tell you how to put it together properly, and then you have your own.
You get a quick Good Burger training video.
Yeah.
Now what they need to do is they need the instructions to be on a small VHS tape.
Oh yeah.
And have it just be a full-on Good Burger training video.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Somebody call Kel Mitchell.
Yeah.
And Coolio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, Coolio. He's got to do the music.
Oh, here it goes.
So you talked about that and how you can get it wherever, and that it's not going to last forever. So if you want to get it sooner than later, because
and the movies pop up as reserve or reservation only. So
so it's open.
It stayed open,
and there's no eating indoors, so it stays open. So if you guys want to go check it out, which I really do, maybe we'll do it this week. I don't know.
You're closer to it than I am with your job. So
yeah. So you talked about that. It was just a good panel. Nice, again, usual nice closer. And he brought it up too. He's like, normally I interact with an audience and there's a Q&A and I have to be all funny the whole time. And now I'm just talking to a camera and I don't know what's going on, but I hope you guys like it. But I'm going to keep doing this for a little bit longer. And so you can tell he was kind of out of his normal element, but he still did the best he could. And it was great.
No, it's solid. Yeah. And I mean, this guy has so many podcasts at this point. Like, he's got a whole channel of just his podcasts. Uh-huh. And I think that sort of idea really is inspiring, especially to me, and I don't know about you, but like I'm inspired by the idea that like he has multiple podcasts that he's taken part of. Like I'd love to start working with Nick a little bit more on what he's doing. And just kind of grow that, because it seems like that's kind of the logical step. And in Smodcast and with like Comic Book Men and with this new vegan podcast and with everything else he's done. Like this guy. Content.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's just pumping it out. He's like, I like making stuff. And rather than worry that much about whether or not it's perfect, like, he saves that perfectionism for his movies. But you're talking about a guy who very well could have gone broke when he first made, like, he maxed out a bunch of credit cards and took a bunch of loans and, like, just jammed together, $40,000 or whatever to make Clerks. And
he had to make it at night because it was an actual
working convenience
that he
store.
actually worked at.
Yeah. And now, he's Kevin Smith.
Yeah, and then his little podcast company bought one of the stores at the very end of that convenience lot, and they converted it into like a live podcast theater.
Oh, cool!
With like a 50-seat audience when it's not.
When we're not all sheltering in place and lockdown.
But yeah, he's like, you can go to the quick stop and get some eggs, just some milk, or a pack of cigs, and then head over to the podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were there any other panels? That was pretty much our closer.
No,
right?
That was pretty much it.
So we got other panels
Saturday
that we can talk about other panels that we didn't get to watch ahead of time, because that's the glory of Comic-Con at home having this. I personally would really like to see Comic-Con stick to this format insofar as
recording them,
putting these things online for viewing, maybe wait a week or something so that you can edit them all together or what have you. But, I also wouldn't mind if, since all of them are so close, put an individual camera in front of every one of the speakers, and let them all, just let me see every single one of them like we're doing here, but like at the con, hopefully with everything going on next year. I think that'd be really, really great, because they do something similar anyway. They just usually will cut out like exclusive trailers and stuff. They'll be like, "Nah, we're not going to do that. We're going to let those poor bootleggers get that."
And Kevin Smith brought that up a couple times. He's like, "Yeah, normally I'll miss stuff, but I'll wait online on Twitter for some Joe Schmo to have a crappy little camera and put it on, but I eat that shit up."
Yep.
So he's like, maybe they'll keep doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and it's cool too, because if you do that sort of thing, you can also bring in people that you don't have to worry about coordinating all this. All of these panels didn't happen live.
No.
These were all pre-recorded. They all had their Zoom meetings throughout the week.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, maybe all of Keanu's happened on the same day, because I know he had more than one.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is something that if you at least... I mean, hell, you could even have like, hey, we couldn't get so-and-so here, but we did do a Zoom meeting earlier this week. Yeah. So here's, 10 minutes from that. And we just talked to him and asked him a couple of questions.
I think this is it was a good trial run for maybe something new in the future with Comic-Con, or maybe even like, because Comic-Con's normally in July. What if they do something in like January, February? We're like, oh, here's a Comic-Con at home, and just halfway through the year.
Yeah, and well, like, remember when we saw at WonderCon Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Clark Gregg was...
He was in D.C.
He was in D.C. Or was he in D.C. or was he up in Washington State?
He was in D.C.
Okay, he was in D.C. Because he was protesting, but he was also working...
Captain Marvel.
Yeah, he was helping with the Women's March, and he was present there, but he was also filming Captain Marvel, and obviously we're going to talk about that. But that little bit of like, hey, how's everybody doing, was cool, but I feel like we could take that, because he does a quick like, hello, WonderConners, how are you?
Yeah.
I hope you guys are enjoying your con, yada, 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 here's what I'm doing right now, and then that was that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something a little more like this, where it was like, we don't have an answer from, because we couldn't get so-and-so to show up, we did ask them a few questions, and we recorded, our interaction at home, and here it is real quick. Yeah. And, I don't want to watch a Zoom meeting while I'm sitting there watching my, panelists or whatever, but panels are also like an hour and a half, not 45 minutes. So,
they can throw in a quick 5-10 minute segment.
So it's a nice way to break up what we're doing, right? Also, what was, obviously you've said Bill and Ted was your favorite panel of the whole thing. What were some of your other favorite moments of all of Comic-Con at home?
I mean, besides just kind of watching whatever, whenever, but also there's a few panels I just missed, and like, oh, I didn't realize that was a panel, and then just put that on.
Which is a common thing, where we go, oh, I didn't realize it was a panel.
Because there's so many.
Yeah, because there's so much going on. That's all the panels that we watched.
Yeah.
Aside from the one we didn't talk about yet.
We'll get to that later.
Saturday Insulting.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved having access to all these panels.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing all these things. And I mean, obviously, even though I was able to walk in and out of the room with Kevin Smith going on, I was cooking.
Yeah.
While Kevin Smith was talking.
Yeah.
Like, that was fantastic.
I can do other things while he's going.
I can take care of things.
Yeah, I cleaned my room while I was watching one of the panels. It might have been the Dune panel. I was like cleaning my room, putting some comics up.
Yeah, I drove to Nicole's house and picked her up while listening to the Bill and Ted final 15 minutes. I had to go back and replay the last segment of trailer or what have you.
It was a pretty solid day of panels when you watched them in.
It's funny is we're like, it was a pretty solid day of panels because it's about as many panels as you can get to, but it's also the only panels like that were huge that were out. Like, when we were looking at Sunday, we were like, were there any panels that were really noteworthy in Sunday? And there were some cool ones, Jack Kirby 101 and stuff like that. None of them were going to hold any major news for our franchise. It was all like, it was all this, discussions about things going on
in the industry and
stuff going on in the industry,
which is cool. And actually, there's a few that I'll probably watch
we might
eventually.
throw them on.
Yeah, and normally at Comic-Con, Thursday and Sunday are kind of the slower days. They'll have some indie stuff.
Slightly less popular franchises might do Thursday.
Sunday morning, the first couple panels. Though you'll have like the Doctor Who panel, you have Supernatural panel, typically. So very niche shows like that, that are still big, they'll be there too. But like
a lot of gatherings will happen on that day too. Like I think the
it's kind of the day that
sing along was on a Sunday.
Yeah, because it's typically the day where people go home.
Yeah, no, that's the day when people are packing up and leaving, and a lot of people won't stay in the exhibit hall even halfway through the day.
Yeah,
and the day's shorter on Sunday anyway. I know that was one of the things that really confused us about Star Wars Celebration. Is we were like, wait, there's stuff on Monday?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
what?
They had full panel. They had the episode 1 panel was on Monday, and it was great.
Yeah, it was great, but it was still like, wait, Monday?
Yeah.
You sure? I liked there were a lot of options, and I liked that there were newsworthy things coming out of those panels.
Yeah.
For me, that moment when they announced that Dragon Prince had been renewed for the entire saga.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And not just to the audience, but to the actual cast. Like, hey, guys, you got a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That and watching their just sheer joy that they were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so...
I can't wait to
That was a solid
moment,
moment, yeah.
Things like that are kind of the magic of panels that I really love. Like when they announced that Clone Wars was saved.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard, but Clone Wars came back.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Gasp.
But when they announced that sort of thing, that was news to the world.
Yeah.
And we heard it.
We were there.
From Dave Filoni's mouth.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is one of the best parts about panels is like you're the first to know about something.
Yeah.
But it's also the first time they get to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh yeah, this thing came out. Because like, let's face it, after you've learned the news about something, by the 10th person you've told, you're not going, holy God, did you know that Clone Wars is coming back? I mean, we did. But like every single one of those times before that, leading up to the 10th, 20th, 100th time that you have to talk about this, you're gonna lose a little of that steam.
Yeah.
And the first time you get to be like, hey, guess what? New Doctor. Hey, guess what? Torchwood. Hey, guess what? New Star Wars thing, new anime thing, new comic thing, new book, new writer, new audiobook, new whatever. The first time you get to announce that, you've been bottling it up.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of a panel. And with this, I think a lot of that was gone.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And that was a little bit of a bummer, but there's also just a lot less opportunity for it because, you are trying to also coordinate Zoom meetings, which are, a little easier to do than flying somebody out and then putting them up in a hotel and all that sort of thing. But, that aspect of panels was sometimes achieved, and it was pretty cool in that regard.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So that was Saturday.
That is Saturday.
Yeah. Like we said, Sunday didn't have a whole lot going on, but we still have a nice little discussion that we have planned for Sunday.
Yes, we do.
So you'll hear that whenever we release it. Hopefully soon.
Hopefully very soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, be cool about fire safety. And
only you can prevent forest fires.
Only you can prevent forest fires. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. And wear your damn masks.
It's not that hard. It's not that uncomfortable for 10, 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah. You get to take it off when you get into your car. And then you get to do that weird face that it's the new, changing back out of your work clothes. You just get into the car and just rip that thing off and then hand sanitize and then wipe your face down with your hands that have been touching all the things. And
if you're lucky, you'll get the hand sanitizer that smells like shitty tequila. So you're like, oh, this almost smells like a margarita.
Oh, yeah. Rub that margarita all over your face.
Yeah.
You piece of shit. Anyway, I'm thinking we end it here. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us again. We'll get back to you about Sunday.
Woo! Sunday. Okay, outro music, play.
Be excellent to each other. And